Hello, everyone. Today, I want to share a piece of my life with you. My name is Lily, and I'm 28 years old. I've walked a difficult path, and I believe my experience holds an important lesson about love, trust, and the pain of heartbreak. This isn't just a fabricated tale, it's my reality. It's the story of how I met my husband, how we built a life together, and how everything crumbled after we were married. I will take you back to the beginning, to our dating days when everything seemed absolutely perfect. Let's start from the very beginning. I can still vividly recall the day I met Ethan. It was 5 years ago, on a crisp autumn afternoon. I was working at a small, cozy cafe in the heart of New York City. Ethan walked in, dressed in a sharp black suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He radiated an air of confidence and undeniable charm. I was behind the counter, and when our eyes met, he gave me a warm, friendly smile that could instantly brighten anyone's day. He ordered a cappuccino, and as I handed it to him, he said, "Thank you. By the way, you have beautiful eyes." I felt a blush creep up my cheeks. No one had ever complimented me so directly before. Ethan became a daily visitor at the cafe. Sometimes he would bring me small bouquets of flowers, simple daisies or bright tulips. At first, I dismissed it as him just being exceptionally kind, but then he formally asked me out to dinner. I was a bundle of nerves, but also incredibly excited. He chose a quaint Italian restaurant for our first date. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, we talked for hours. He told me about his career in marketing, a job he was passionate about. He listened to my stories with a level of attention I had never experienced before. He made me feel truly special. For the next 2 years, Ethan and I were inseparable. He would surprise me with handwritten notes tucked into my coat pocket, take me on spontaneous long drives along the coast, and always remembered to bring my favorite dark chocolates. Our weekends were filled with trips to the beach or cozy movie nights at his apartment. One evening, as we were taking a walk through Central Park, Ethan suddenly stopped. He turned to me and said, "Lily, you are the single best thing that has ever happened to me. I cannot imagine a single day of my life without you." Then, he dropped to one knee and presented a beautiful ring. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his voice filled with emotion. Tears of joy streamed down my face as I said yes. It was, without a doubt, the happiest moment of my entire life. We were married 6 months later on a perfect summer day. I wore a delicate white lace gown, and Ethan looked incredibly handsome in a navy blue suit. All of our friends and family were there to celebrate with us. We danced under a canopy of stars, laughing and holding each other close. Ethan whispered in my ear, "I promise to love you forever," and I believed him with every fiber of my being. The first 2 years of our marriage felt like a continuation of that dream. We bought a small apartment and had so much fun decorating it together. Ethan loved to cook. So many of our evenings were spent in the kitchen, experimenting with new recipes and filling our home with laughter. On Sundays, we would sleep in late and enjoy breakfast in bed. He was my best friend, my partner, my everything. I trusted him completely. But life has a way of showing you that nothing is permanent. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, things began to change. Ethan became more distant, spending longer hours at work and less time with me. Initially, I convinced myself he was just under a lot of pressure from a big project. But then, I started noticing small things that just didn't feel right. This is where the beautiful chapter of my story ends, and a much darker one begins. At first, the changes were subtle. He would arrive home much later than usual, offering a quick, "Sorry, Lily, I was swamped at the office." I accepted his explanation without question. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, the man who had promised me forever. But the late nights became a regular occurrence. He stopped asking about my day. Our once lively dinners became quiet and strained. Ethan was constantly on his phone, texting someone and smiling at messages that were clearly not from me. One evening, I couldn't hold back my curiosity any longer. "Ethan, who are you always texting?" I asked. He looked up, a flash of surprise on his face. "It's just work stuff, Lily. You don't need to worry about it." He kissed my forehead and walked away, but his dismissal did nothing to ease my growing anxiety. I did worry. Something felt deeply wrong. One Saturday, Ethan announced he had to go into the office for an urgent meeting. This was unusual. He never worked on weekends. I decided to distract myself by cleaning the apartment. As I was folding his laundry, a small receipt fell out of his jeans pocket. It was for a very expensive dinner at a restaurant we had never visited together. The date on the receipt was from the previous Tuesday, a night he told me he was working late. My heart sank into my stomach. Maybe it was a client dinner, I tried to reassure myself, attempting to calm the storm brewing inside my head. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. A few weeks later, I was jolted awake in the middle of the night by the vibration of Ethan's phone on the nightstand. He was fast asleep beside me. I reached over to silence it, and the screen lit up. I saw a preview of a message. "Miss you already. Can't wait to see you again." My hands began to tremble. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Who was sending this message to my husband? I carefully placed the phone back down and stared at the dark ceiling, my mind racing with 1,000 terrible possibilities. The next morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. Over breakfast, I confronted him. "Ethan, are you seeing someone else?" He looked up from his coffee, his eyes wide with shock. "What? No, Lily, why would you ever think that?" I calmly pulled the dinner receipt from my pocket and placed it on the table between us. "Then explain this, Ethan." His face went pale. He stammered, It's nothing, just a dinner with a colleague." My voice was cold and steady. "Which colleague sends you messages like that in the middle of the night?" I asked, referencing the text. He fell silent. That silence was louder and more damning than any confession could have been. Finally, Ethan admitted everything. There was another woman. Her name was Clara, and she worked in his office. "It just happened," he said, avoiding my gaze. "I never meant to hurt you." I felt the floor disappear from beneath me. The man I loved, the man I had trusted with my entire heart, had betrayed me in the most profound way. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. 6 months, he confessed. 6 months. For half a year, he had been living a double life, lying to my face and sharing his love with someone else. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every corner of our home was a painful reminder of him. Our wedding photo on the wall, the coffee mug he used every morning, the couch where we used to cuddle and watch movies. I cried until I had no tears left. My heart felt like it had been shattered into a million tiny pieces. One evening, I sat alone in our bedroom, holding my wedding ring. I thought about all the promises Ethan had made. "I promise to love you forever." Those words now felt like a cruel joke. I kept torturing myself with questions. Why wasn't I enough? What did I do wrong? Could I have done something differently to prevent this? But then, a moment of clarity cut through the fog of my grief. This wasn't my fault. Ethan's choices were his own. As the old saying goes, once a cheater, always a cheater. The most difficult moment came when I saw them together. I was walking to the grocery store when I spotted Ethan and Clara at an outdoor cafe. He was laughing, holding her hand, and looking at her with the same adoration he once reserved for me. It felt like a physical blow to my stomach. I quickly turned around and walked away, hot tears streaming down my face. That night, sitting alone in the quiet apartment, I knew I had a choice. I could let this devastating pain consume and destroy me, or I could find the strength to rebuild my life from the ashes. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, at my tear-stained face, and I said to myself, "Lily, you deserve so much better." I sat alone in our small apartment, where the silence was so heavy it felt like a physical weight. Ethan had packed his bags and left. The emptiness he left behind was overwhelming, but within that void, there was also an opportunity. It was a chance to find myself again. I had no idea where to begin. The man I believed was my forever had broken every promise and shattered every dream we had built. But as I sat there, staring at the wedding ring he had left on the counter, a new thought took hold. This is not the end of my story. The first step was to pack away every reminder of Ethan. Our photographs, the gifts he had given me, the sweet notes he used to write. It was an agonizing process, like ripping off a bandage from a raw wound. But I knew I needed to clear the space, both physically and emotionally, to make room for something new. Next, I decided to focus entirely on myself. For too long, my life had revolved around Ethan, always putting his needs and desires before my own. Now, for the first time in years, I asked myself, what does Lily want? I started with small, manageable actions. Every morning, I would wake up, make myself a cup of coffee, and write in a journal. I poured out all my pain, my fears, and my fragile hopes for the future. Writing became my therapy, a way to process the chaos in my mind. I also started taking long walks in the park. At first, I consciously avoided the paths Ethan and I used to frequent, but then I had a realization. Why should I let his memory claim those beautiful places? So I began walking through those familiar spots, one deliberate step at a time, reclaiming them as my own. During one of these walks, I saw a little girl struggling to fly a kite. The wind kept knocking it to the ground, but she never gave up. She would laugh, pick it up, and try again and again. Watching her simple persistence, I thought, if she can keep trying, so can I. On a whim, I signed up for a painting class. I had always loved art but had never made the time for it. The first time I held a paintbrush, I felt something inside me shift. It was as if I was channeling all my pain, anger, and sorrow onto the canvas. One of my paintings, a depiction of a stormy sea with a single, small sun breaking through the dark clouds, became my favorite. It was a visual reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a glimmer of hope. I also reconnected with old friends. I had unintentionally pushed them away during my marriage, too consumed by my life with Ethan to realize how much I needed their support. When I finally opened up to them about what had happened, they surrounded me with love. They hugged me, cried with me, and reminded me that I was not alone in this world. One day, I stumbled upon a quote that profoundly changed my perspective. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I understood then that I needed to forgive Ethan, not for his sake, but for my own. Clinging to the pain and resentment was only hurting me, so I wrote him a long letter. I never sent it, but I poured out everything I ever wanted to say. I forgive you, Ethan. Not because what you did was acceptable, but because I deserve to be at peace. After writing that letter, I felt a massive weight lift from my shoulders. As the months passed, I began to fall in love with myself again. I would look in the mirror and see a strong, beautiful, resilient woman staring back. I was no longer the same broken Lily who had cried herself to sleep every night. I was someone new, someone who had been forged in fire and had come out stronger. I started setting new goals for myself. I wanted to travel, learn new skills, and meet new people. I even launched a blog to share my journey of healing, hoping my story could inspire others who were going through similar struggles. One evening, while writing a new post, a thought struck me. Sometimes life has to break you down so it can rebuild you into someone even stronger. Pain is a powerful teacher. It revealed to me my own strength, my resilience, and my inherent worth. It taught me that I don't need anyone else to complete me. I was already whole on my own. A year after Ethan left, I took a solo trip to Italy. As I stood in front of the magnificent Colosseum in Rome, a place I had always dreamed of visiting, I felt a sense of freedom I had never known before. I smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. Not because my life was perfect, but because I had finally learned how to be truly happy, all on my own. Here are some motivational lessons I learned for everyone. 1. You are so much stronger than you think. Life will inevitably knock you down, but every time you rise, you become more powerful. 2. Pain is a teacher, not a punishment. Use your struggles to grow and evolve into the best version of yourself. 3. Let go of what hurts you. Forgiveness isn't about excusing their actions. It's about freeing yourself from the burden. 4. Love yourself first. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Take care of your heart, your mind, and your soul above all else. 5. Your story is not over. Every ending is just a new beginning. And always remember, the comeback is always stronger than the setback. This is the story of how I lost myself, found myself, and became a woman I am incredibly proud to be. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Thank you for joining me on this journey to learn English.